Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. All right. I just finished a remake, a revisit of an old video that's been up on this channel. And a lot of you have seen on, what is it, How to Practice Nichiren Buddhism, something like that. And it's been a long time, so I thought, it's probably time I revisit that subject with the rhetoric that I've grown to express in the last decade or so since I recorded that video, and just answer that question again. What are we doing practicing Nichiren Buddhism, right? So you can see that one. I'm not sure what the title will be yet, but I'm recording this on a new computer. Hopefully it looks like it's functioning really well, not dropping any frames. I forgot to put that window up, actually. Anyway. Do I have that up here? Oh, software. Stats. That's what I want to see. Yep. Everything looks really good. So thank you for your practice, for using this channel and its various resources, threefoldlotus.com, so on and so forth. And we're going to continue with our Lankavatara Sutra via Mr. Suzuki's translation. So, here we go. Well done, Lord of Lanka. Well done indeed, Lord of Lanka, for once more. The yogin is to discipline himself as thou doest. Wow. I'm not sure why Mr. Suzuki feels the need to use Old English, I think it's called Old English, as a, this is medieval sounding. But whatever, we're going to deal with his English bias throughout this translation, so I suppose we can deal with it. I certainly will call it out whenever it seems a distraction, yeah? The Tathagatas and all things are to be viewed as they are viewed by thee. Otherwise viewed, it is nihilism. So it's interesting that right off the bat in the Lankavatara, that nihilism is identified. This was a big problem in earlier teachings of Buddhism, in Hinayana specifically. Not that Shakyamuni ever taught nihilism, but because initially, in discussing Buddhism and the path to enlightenment, Shakyamuni was dealing with a very unenlightened, if you will, populace, right? They were steeped, and still are in India, steeped in mysticism. Deities as the day is long, and I'm not making fun of them. I'm just saying, culturally, India was a land of, over 120 some national languages. People from one place couldn't understand any people from another place. And yet these were all official languages, like English is in North America. Could you imagine going state to state and hearing somebody speak English but not being able to understand a word they were saying? Yeah, it bends the mind, doesn't it? Well, they're the same way about their beliefs. These amazing deification of everything. Everything, when you have that many deities and mystical thoughts, everything becomes a deification. Butter is deified. Everything becomes a god because there's an intrinsic denial of self agency there. And that's the key. That's to say, I'm just falling through life and I'm waiting for all these beneficial deities and not so beneficial deities to conduct my life and tell me what to do. That's been the province of the Brahma class. The Brahmins are the people that tell people what they should feel. This is a product of the caste system, or, chicken or egg. Is the caste system a product of or a product making? Yeah. Anyway, so this is the audience that Shakyamuni started talking to. People who said they had to talk to their elephant god before they could, decide whether or not it was okay. And I'll just make all these offerings. And once I make all the offerings, it's so complicated that the decision is eschewed. It's not even needed anymore. I just need to do all these rituals. Okay, now I can listen to you. So all of those rituals were for what? To make you compliant? To make you not step on any toes? What in the hell are you doing? But this is how people live. So, the problem with that is that when Shakyamuni started to talk to them about, look, you have to let go of these ideas that you have to do these things like their life itself. You're so attached to these rituals and thoughts that there's no room in there for you. Where are you in all of this miasm of ritual making and rhetoric and reincarnation and all, like someday hoping in 16 millennia that you'll actually be a conscious human? Dude, you're already there. What are you doing? Well, that was very unsettling. People threw stones at him for just walking. Get out of here, you devil, you this and that. Because they were attached to their rituals and their deifications and their mystical thoughts. Yeah, Shakyamuni was an enemy to many. No less an enemy to the Brahmins who were controlling all of these sorry people. Yeah? So, to nihilism's point, when the conversation turned, and these are followers now, Hinayanists, they're following Shakyamuni, he's got something to say here, something of value. They're quite a step beyond the general populace, but they're still culturally related, yeah? And he teaches them, and he breaks down the idea of a self. How do you identify that self? Do you identify it as this, not that? You're actually a separate thing in the universe? Or are you an constantly incurring, instantiated moment of energies, and you're identifying that karma of yourself, which was the first big change. Karma was doled out by the Brahmins before Shakyamuni came about. Oh, this is your life, this is how you'll end up, and you'll never be any more than that, but you'll be all of this, and you're responsible for that, and then here's your karma. It sounds ridiculous, I'm sorry, but that's how things were. Until Shakyamuni comes along and goes, no. Karma is of your making. And karma is what you are an instantiation of. But you are in every moment affecting that freight train of energies that you identify as a self. But that was hard to teach. And so at first there was the idea of there's a self and there's a not self. Get people thinking, use their dualities, use their dualism thinking to start to whittle away at this idea that they are an individual, separate existence than what is around them. What is around you is a reflection of you, and you are a reflection of what is around. It's all the same thing. What? I can't get that. Okay, then let's start small. Let's start with your separation from everything and how there is no real separation. Let's start there. unfortunately, a lot of that logic took place verbally, from what we can tell, as a negation, a process of negations, right? Think of the in-between. There's a self and there's a not self. What's a non-self? Exactly. And then you start affecting the mind, right? Buddhism is about the mind. And chipping away at preciously, constantly abiding beliefs, holdings, and slowly making those dissolve. Well, it's not far from that simplistic thinking that you get to nihilism. I have to get rid of self. I have to get rid of environment. I have to get rid of everything. I have to annihilate the self. Well, that's nihilism. Buddhism isn't about that. Buddhism is about shedding all of the things that we drag along with our experience of life and call it a self, right? So that we can emerge as a true experience of life without all that baggage that's keeping us from seeing it, experiencing it. That's not nihilism, that's discovery. That's the phoenix from the flames. That's whatever analogy you need. Coming out of your shell of samsara, yeah? He goes on, all things are to be comprehended by transcending the sita, manas, and vijnana, as is done by thee. So he keeps referencing what the stand-in for all of these people's questions, Mahamati, right? Thou shouldest look inwardly and not become attached to the letter and a superficial view of things. Thou shouldest not fall into the attainments, the conceptions, experiences, views, and samadhis of the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and philosophers. Thou shouldest not have any liking for small talk and witticism. Thou shouldest not cherish the notion of self-substance. This, which also is a great departure from the Vedas, which those are very early. They go back 12,000 BC, right? Or thereabouts, the end of the last ice age. And those Vedas, early on, which introduced Brahma and Vishnu and all those gods, Shakyamuni understood all of those things as personifications of aspects of mind. And he lamented that those elucidations were lost in time, and that in his day, Shakyamuni's day, was this insane patchwork of mysticism in its place. So when he came along, he first set about to redress the basics, like what is karma really? You guys have made it into this miasm of craziness. Karma is yours to control, to make, that you're instantiating with every moment. That's karma. Karma is energy with work, the work of the mind. That was revolutionary. And in the Vedas was a notion of a self being a separate thing, and he cast that away. So no self-substance. This was a big part of what I just described in Hinayana, and now here it is halfway through the Mahayana. He's still hammering on this. There's no separate, indicative self. There is just the moment of instantiation of the freight train that you're constantly modifying. So where is the extant self-existing thing you call you? You're a process. You're not a thing. Nor have any thought for the vainglory or rulership, nor dwell on such dhyanas as belonging to the 6 dhyanas, etc. Again, he's talking about attachments. Get your attitude right, right? Lord of Lanka, this is the realization of the great yogins. By yogins, he means practitioners of Buddhism, but more specifically, practitioners of this realization. An early attempt at Buddhahood, yeah? And I will go back here and say, he's saying, don't follow the views of the samadhis, the deep meditations of the Shravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and philosophers. Why does he group people as from the world of learning and from the world of realization, the voice hearers and the and those capable of understanding the Buddha's words, with philosophers? Again, he's addressing earlier practitioners, earlier sects. But even beyond Hinayana and Agama, there are sects that still have the hierarchies of practice of the Shravakas and Pratyekabuddhas all the way to Arhat, really, although he's not mentioning them here, are problematic. And he includes them with the philosophers. Why? Because the philosophers' preeminent litmus test for everything is the self, ego. Everything is viewed from the perspective of the self. Even enlightenment. I have enlightened. I am enlightened. Well, if you're enlightened, then where's the I fit into that? Why are you still glued to a self if you're enlightened? You're not coursing as Bodhi if you're walking around saying, I can save you. Do you see what I'm saying? And so Sravaka, Pratyekabuddha, for all their accomplishments, even an Arhat, they still see themselves as a self. They still talk about, for example, this is my last lifetime. I will not have to return. Well, if you're truly understanding Buddhism, as you and I do through the practice of the Lotus Sutra, right? Shakyamuni's ultimate teaching, there is no lifespan. It is not yours. You are simply a process happening moment to moment. That I won't have to come back another lifetime thing is still a reference to reincarnation. That's Hinduism, that's not Buddhism. It's completely obliterated in Buddhism. There is no that. You are not a bag of bob or a box of Betty. You are not cleaning that mess up so that you don't have to reinstantiate it. No. You're being completely separate from that whole illusion. That's why it no longer affects you. Because it was a dream. But this is very hard to get across, especially with words. You have to experience it. Yeah? But this is what he's trying to do at this point in Mahayana. To destroy the discourses advanced by others, to crush mischievous views in pieces, to keep themselves properly away from ego-centered notions, well, there it is, to cause a revulsion in the depths of the mind fittingly by means of an exquisite knowledge. Now, this is pointing to prajna again, right? What's the exquisite knowledge, though? It's not a collection of facts. Why is it exquisite? Because it's an experience, an enlightened experience. It is what you and I experience when we chant profoundly to our mandala in the Butsudan, and we become disembodied from all of the attachments. It will happen. You will perceive it in your mind. You may not understand what it is at first, but that's what's happening. Is you're dislodging yourself, your true experience and process of life from all of the accoutrements that are the delusions you cling to and crave in samsara. It's really an amazing experience. Such are sons of the Buddha who walk in the way of the Mahayana. In order to enter upon the stage of self-realization as attained by the Tathagatas, the discipline is to be pursued by thee. This is what you need to do. Lord of Lanka, conducting thyself in this manner, let thee be further purified in the way thou hast attained, by disciplining thyself well in samadhi and samapatti. Hi, my apologies, dear friends. As you'll notice in this video, there are a couple of glitches between the video and audio. I was hoping that this new computer would avail us to better production value in the videos, but even with the... anyway, my efforts continue. One of these days, I will get a proper desktop computer that can handle the throughput required of these videos. In the meantime, I hope you'll, because I do these ad lib, I'm going to post this video as is, and there will be a disjuncture and some pauses in the audio. Not a great many, but don't be concerned. This isn't happening at your end. This is in the original video. My apologies again for the distractions of that. But I hope you understand, and I hope you understand also this is the reason why we need the support financially, so that we can get the proper equipment to do this channel justice and make these videos beyond my capacity, evidently. The laptops just aren't capable of doing this work. If there's a way, I don't know it. So I will go back to the other computer, which I think we've had much better luck with. Philosophers, which rises from the imagination of those who discipline themselves according to the practices of the puerile philosophers. Again, he's talking about a different form of attachment. Detachment as an attachment. This is the most difficult thing for humans to conceive of in their minds. Well, what if I do this? Well, what if I do that? Well, I've got that down. Well, now I'm a this. Well, you're still an I. You're missing the point. It's a difficult point, isn't it? And it's easy to slip from that to nihilism. It's not about nihilism. It's not about getting rid of you. It's about understanding you so much more profoundly. Blah, blah, blah. Words, right? They cling to the individual forms of the world created by their egotistical ideas. They maintain such notions as element, quality, and substance. They cling tenaciously to views originating from ignorance. They become confused by cherishing the idea of birth where prevails emptiness. They think and you understand emptiness hopefully by now, right? And I have videos on this channel about it. Emptiness is not nothingness. Emptiness is energy quiescent, without formation. We are a product of formations, karma, energy with work, formation to achieve form, all phenomena. This is the formula of life. But if you see the formula of life from the perspective of non-formation, then you understand the whole game, the whole experience. If you've witnessed it from inside the game, then it's all the game. You just understand it better. But you're still in it. Do you see? They cling, and the word cling is appropriate, they cling to discrimination as real. I can tell this is not that, and that is not that, and that is not this. Well, then you're that, and in that, and in this. You're identifying who you are by identifying everything around you. Then you're in it. They fall into the way of thinking where obtains the dualism of qualifying and qualified. Lord of Lanka, this is what leads to various excellent attainments. This is what makes one grow aware of the inmost attainment. This is the Mahayana realization. This will result in the acquirement of an excellent condition of existence. And isn't that what we want? Our completely unabated, unchanneled life experience. We want to manifest all of our potential. We want to witness the process of life through our individual minds. That's the only purpose for life, for our minds to witness life. It's amazing. Amazing beyond comprehension. Comprehensible only by Buddhas. Buddha-ness, our mental facility to witness and understand the profundity of that witnessing and experience. That's Buddha-ness. How do we get there? Where are we time-wise? Lord of Lanka, by entering upon the Mahayana discipline, the veils of ignorance are destroyed and one turns away from the multitudinous waves of the Vijnana, the functions of the samsaric mind, of possession, fear of losing what we possess, ascertaining, craving for, more. All of that is keeping us blind to the actual being of life. Our very process of mind. That this body exists, this body, by the way, not being anything else than the universe, this body being an apparatus for this mind of witnessing to emerge. Look at this, look at this, look at this. Look at what's happening. My process of living is witnessing all of life. How do we live like that? This is the proposition of Buddhism. Not a definition of self by virtue of clothes, eye color, car, house, relationship. You see the difference? One is mired in attachments. The other, no need for attachments. Just a witness to the amazement of life itself. Not into the refuge and practice of the philosophers, which are busy qualifying how we categorize everything. Doesn't that make us amazing? Lord of Lanka, the philosophers' practice starts from their own egotistic attachments. There's an old cliche about psychologists or psychiatrists. They get into the field to solve their own problems. That's quite accurate. And by extension, then solve everyone else's problems, because they're all like me, egos. Their ugly practice arises from adhering to dualistic views concerning the self-nature of the Vijnanas. And in one sentence, what he's saying is the self-nature, the idea of a self, comes from an attached mind, a categorizing, identifying mind. Without that mind, we would just be another animal roaming the planet, yeah? Well done, Lord of Lanka. Reflect on the signification of this as you did when seeing the Tathagata before, for this indeed is seeing the Tathagata. At that time, it occurred to Ravana, sorry, I wish to see the emancipated one again, who has all the disciplinary practices at his command, who has turned away from the practices of the philosophers, who is born of the state of realization in the inmost consciousness, and who is beyond the dualism of the transformed and the transforming. He is the knowledge realized by the yogins. He is the realization attained by those who enjoy the perfect bliss of samadhi, which they gain by coming into intuitive understanding through meditation. May I see thus again the compassionate one by means of his miraculous powers, in whom the fuel of passion and discrimination is destroyed, who is surrounded by sons of the Buddha, and who has penetrated into the minds and thoughts of all beings, who moves about everywhere, who knows everything, who keeps himself away from work and form. Now, work and form. Again, I keep coming back to my verbiage around this so that this makes sense for you. He's just trying to describe this state of mind, Buddha-ness. Although he's using the form of he, as in an ego, a person, right? Bad language, really, to describe this enlightenment. And he's identifying as a person, which it is not, who is surrounded by sons of the Buddha, in other words, other minds aspiring to this liberation, this emancipation, who has penetrated into the minds and thoughts of all beings, in other words, we all have Buddha nature, who moves about everywhere, because it's not a person, it's not one body, it's a mental state that's common to the universe prior to time, right? The beginningless Buddha, who knows everything, well, experiences, understands, witnesses everything, slippery, who keeps himself away from work. What did I say about karma? Energy with work. Energy, potential, let me say it another way. Potential isn't something. Potential is the opportunity for anything. But as soon as you apply work to it, apply I was going to say energy to it. The moment there's any kind of, what did I call it in previous, perturbance in the quiescence of energy, then there are formations, there are energies expressing themselves in tendencies and conditions, and the moment that happens, something is instantiated. Something comes into existence, form. So this is a very subtle time without time kind of border. Quantum fields discusses this very thing. Atoms coming into existence come into existence as a pair, positive, negative, matter, antimatter. And then one is obliterated and the other continues or doesn't. This borderline that particle physicists are trying to define. Formations. Yeah, we know this scientifically. This isn't gobbledygook. So when he says, who keeps himself, and this is thousands of years old that I'm reading. Well, this translation is of some teaching thousands of years old. So, pretty amazing insight, isn't it? Keeps away from work and form, because without work, there is no form. It's so simple. when you take it apart this way, right? Seeing him, may I attain what I have not yet attained. Retain what I have already gained. May I conduct myself with non-discrimination. Now I have to go back. You see the fallacies in this sentence? The problematic here is as soon as you read, he keeps himself away from work and form. All right, got it. Seeing him, may I attain what I have not yet attained. Wrong. You have this mind already. You just haven't awakened to it. So instead of attained, maybe we can understand attained this way. His language is slippery. But then he says, retain what I have already gained. You haven't gained anything. Perhaps you're becoming more aware. Is that a form of gaining? See, the problem is his language is designed around ego. This is why language is such a problem here. May I conduct myself with non-discrimination, abide in the joy of samadhi and samapatti, and attain the ground where the Tathagatas walk, and in these make progress. Wow, what a word salad. He's just basically saying, I want enlightenment. I want this emancipation from all this delusion of ownership and losing, and I want to maintain it. I want to stay in this mind state. That's not a ground the Tathagatas walk on or make progress in. That's an attempt at poetics. I just want enlightenment. I want to be in it all the time. Right? That I understand. At that moment, the emancipated one, recognizing that the Lord of Lanka is to attain the Anutpatkadharma Kshanti, showed his glorious compassion for the 10-headed one by making himself visible once more on the mountain peak, studded with many jewels and enveloped in the network of jewels. The 10-headed king of Lanka saw the splendor again. As seen before on the mountain peak, he saw the Tathagata, who was the Arhat and fully enlightened one. Arhat. Why is that word still being used in the Lankavatara? I'm going to question it, okay? With the 32 marks of excellence beautifully adorning his person, and also saw himself on each mountain peak, together with Mahamati, in front of the Tathagata, the fully enlightened one, putting forward his discourse on the realization experienced by the Tathagata in his inmost self, and surrounded by the yakshas, conversing on the verbal teachings and stories of the Buddha. Those Buddha lands were seen with the leaders. Then the emancipated one, beholding again this great assembly with his wisdom eye, which is not the human eye, laughed loudly and most vigorously like the Lion King, emitting rays of light from the tuft of hair between his eyebrows, from the ribs, from the loins, from the shrivasta on the breast, and from every pore of the skin, emitting rays of light which shone flaming like the fire taking place at the end of a kalpa, like a luminous rainbow, like the rising sun blazing brilliantly, gloriously, which were observed from the sky by Shakra, Brahma, and the guardians of the world. The one who sat on the peak of Lanka, vying with Mount Sumeru, laughed the loudest laugh at the time the assembly of the Bodhisattvas, together with the Shakra and Brahma, each thought within himself, quote, for what reason, I wonder, from what cause does the emancipated one, who is the master of all the world, Sravadharma Savaravartin, after smiling first, laugh the loudest laugh, Why does he emit rays of light from his own body? Why, emitting rays of light, does he remain silent with the realization of the truth in his inmost self and absorb deeply and showing no surprise in the bliss of samadhi and reviewing the 10 quarters, looking around like the Lion King and thinking only of the discipline, attainment, and performance of the Ravana? At that time, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who was previously requested by Ravana, the 10-headed guy, to ask the Buddha concerning his self-realization, feeling pity on him, and knowing the minds and thoughts of the assembly of the Bodhisattvas, and observing that beings to be born in the future, here we go, would be confused in their minds because of their delight in the verbal teachings, because of their, in other words, the memorizing. They just wrote memorizing. Oh, I love this new guy. He's teaching us these new rhythms and these new words, and they're so amazing, without really considering what it is they're doing. Because they're clinging to the letter as fully in accordance with the spirit, because of their clinging to the disciplinary powers of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas and philosophers, which might lead them to think how it were that the Tathagatas, the emancipated ones, even in their transcendental state of consciousness, could burst out into loudest laughter. Ha 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 ha! Mahamati, the Bodhisattva, asked the Buddha in order to put a stop to their inquisitiveness. You're upsetting him, the people. The following question, quote, "For what reason, for what cause did this laughter take place?" This should be good. Said the emancipated one, well done, Mahamati, well done indeed, for once more, Mahamati, viewing the world as it is in itself and wishing to enlighten the people in the world who are fallen into a wrong view of things in the past, present, and future, thou undertakest to ask me the question. Thus should it be with the wise men who want to ask questions for both themselves and others. Ravana, Lord of Lanka, O Mahamati, asked a twofold question of the Tathagatas of the past, who are Arhats and perfect Buddhas. Again, not an Arhat, not a perfect Buddha. Again, I will say it again because this is so heinously wrong. Arhats, and this must be from Suzuki's interpretation of Zen as the ultimate, which it is not. Arhats are egos, the very ones I explained earlier, who will say with a straight face that I have achieved enlightenment so that I do not need to be born again. Is it not stated abundant in this book and abundantly throughout the sutras that Buddha-ness is not born, or you're released, you're completely outside the cycle of birth and death? That by itself does not qualify you to say, I don't need to be born again. What are you saying? I no longer need to be reincarnated in the future to work out karma. Well, by saying that statement, oh, yes, you do. But the point is, there is no born again. There is no reincarnation. There's no need for it. It's a delusion. It's a samsaric delusion, and it is a delusion founded on the ego. So tell me, how can a person like that qualify as Buddha? No. Possibly a first stage bodhisattva. Possibly. Because as bodhisattvas, we remain in this earthly apparatus to train the mind and the mind of others with Buddha-ness, attainment of Buddha-ness. But it has nothing to do with our lifetime, our birth and death. It has more to do with moment to moment. Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. So if you understand moment to moment, then how can you say you don't need to be born again? Because that would mean that you just died. Because there's no reason for your next moment. It's a profound misunderstanding in early Buddhism. And so this arhat is not a fully enlightened one. Undoubtedly enlightened, achieved a great deal, walking perhaps as a bodhisattva, as I was saying, but not fully enlightened. Fully enlightened, complete enlightenment, as defined by Shakyamuni, is not an ego, is not a human being. It's a state of mind. And that mind, though it's dependent on this human apparatus and the apparatus of life throughout the universe, can only be a bodhisattva at most. But if that bodhisattva isn't manifesting completely the will to bring other minds to this realization, then he's not really a bodhisattva. He's just somebody who's happy with himself. That, I would say, is a sufficient description of an arhat. Sorry. So this is a heinous error in translation here, and I simply have to nail it down. And he wishes now to ask me to a twofold question in order to have its distinction, attainment, and scope ascertained. This is what is never tasted by those who practice the meditation of the Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and philosophers, and the same will be asked by the question-loving, 10-headed one of the Buddhas to come. It's not going to go away, this question. Knowing that, the emancipated one said to the Lord of Lankas thus: Ask thou, Lord of Lanka, the Tathagata has given thee permission to ask. Delay not. Whatever questions thou desirest to have answered, I will answer each of them with judgment to the satisfaction of your heart. Keeping thy seat of thou free from false discrimination, observe well what is to be subdued at each stage, ponder things with wisdom, seeing into the nature of the inner principle in thyself, abide in the bliss of samadhi, embraced by the Buddhas in samadhi, abide in the bliss of tranquilization, going beyond the samadhi and understanding attained by the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, abide in the attainment of the Bodhisattvas, in the stages of Akala, Sadhumati, and Dharma Mega, grasp well the egolessness of all things in its true significance, be anointed by the Buddhas in samadhi at the great place of the lotus jewels, surrounded by the bodhisattvas who are sitting on lotuses of various sorts, each supported by the gracious power of the Buddhas, thou shalt find thyself sitting on a lotus, and each one of the bodhisattvas looking at thee face to face. This is a realm beyond the imagination. Thou shouldest plan out an adequate plan and establish thyself at a stage of discipline by planning out such a plan as shall include all kinds of skillful means, so that thou comest to realize that realm which is beyond imagination. And thou shouldest attain the stage of Tathagatahood, Buddhahood, in which one is able to manifest oneself in various forms, and which is something never seen before by the Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, philosophers, Brahma, Indra, Upendra, and others. At that moment, the Lord of Lanka, being permitted by the emancipated one, rose from his seat on the peak of the jewel mountain, which shone like the jewel lotus, immaculate and shining in splendor. He was surrounded by a large company of celestial maidens. Oh, isn't he lucky? And all kinds of garlands, flowers, perfumes, incense, unguents. So he's important. Half necklaces, blah, 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 and other ornaments whose splendor and excellence were never heard of or seen before were created. Music was played, surpassing anything that should be. I mean, this is an old form of sutra writing, yeah? So obviously it's not the culminating teaching of the Mahayana. It's holding to these old forms, and how much the translator is holding to these old forms is unclear. But let's keep our mind on that, yeah? Gods, Naksha, yeah, all the gods, blah, 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 blah. Basically, this is saying this is a very, very important question. It's not just a casual request. Well, I would hope not. If you had the opportunity to speak to a Tathagata, which is not a human, it's in the mind. So this is all a mental exercise. So this mental exercise is being defined by all these words as a tremendous insight. The question now in the mind goes beyond our pale, illusory, samsaric ideation to something transcendent. This question, this is a big aha moment. That's what this is defining. The emancipated one and the bodhisattvas were enveloped in a net of jewels of, oh man, he's still describing the question. They're showering great clouds of offerings, blah, 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 blah. Sat down on the peak of Jewel Mountain, ordinary, blah, 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 blah. Man, he still hasn't asked the damn question. Sitting, he made courtesy, smiling first to the emancipated one for his permission and proposed him a twofold question. Finally, we're getting to the question. Quote, it was asked of the Tathagatas of the past, who were arhats, bullshit, fully enlightened ones, okay, got that, and it was solved by them. I'm not so certain that this was a fully Mahayana sutra. Certainly it belongs to the Mahayana, but it seems kind of transitory out of the agamas and yeah. Emancipated one. Now I ask of thee, the request will certainly be compiled with by thee as far as verbal instruction is concerned, as it was by the Buddhas of the past. Emancipated one. Duality was discoursed upon by the transformed Tathagatas and Tathagatas of transformation, but didn't he just do a duality right there? But not by the Tathagatas of silence. The Tathagatas of silence are absorbed in the blissful state of samadhi. They do not discriminate concerning this state, nor do they discourse on it, like you. Emancipated one, thou assuredly wilt discourse on this subject of duality. Thou art thyself a master of all things, a Tathagata. I'm just going to drop the references to Arhat because they don't belong here. Okay? The sons of the Buddha and myself are anxious to listen to it. The emancipated one said, Lord of Lanka, tell me what you mean by duality. The Lord of the Rakshasas, who was renewed in his ornaments, full of splendor and beauty, with a diadem, braces, and necklace. Oh, here we go again. Quote, it is said that even dharmas are to be abandoned, and how much more adharmas? Emancipated one, why does this dualism exist that we are called upon to abandon? What are adharmas? And what are dharmas? How can there be a duality of things to abandon? A duality that arises from falling into discrimination, from discriminating self-substance where there is none, from the idea of things created and uncreated, because of non-differentiating nature of the alaya vijnana is not recognized? Like the seeing of a hair circle as really existing in the air, the notion of dualism belongs to the real or the realm of intellection, not exhaustively purgated. This means, or this being the case as it should be, how could there be any abandonment of dharmas and adharmas? So, interesting question. Basically, he's calling out the negations I was talking about earlier, about Hinayana. And he's talking about how is there dualism if, by your own teachings, dualism is an illusion, then what is there to abandon if it's not real in the first place? Interesting question, yeah? Oh, I'm going on and on and on and on. And on that note, we will endeavor to listen to the Tathagata's response in the next video. Ooh, the tension builds. Listen, I understand the Lankavatara has a lot of word salad in it, but once we get into it, and you hear Mahamati discoursing directly with Tathagata, you're going to hear a rhythm, and you're going to figure this out as we go. I promise you. It's going to become much more straightforward once we get out of all this pomp and circumstance. And so many sutras start in this way, but that's okay. Wow. All right. I may not have solved this problem yet, but again, this was a test video. I see it lagging now. My apologies. I'm going to stop here, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for your practice. Be kind to yourself. And I will... What's my sign off? Oh, yeah.